Happy virtual day, principles class. So what you need to be working on today, we're in unit 4, we're looking at variables. We talked a lot about variables. You should definitely be through investigate. Most of you, I think, are through practice. You should really try to get this make done for sure. And if you're done with it and you have some time, you can go ahead and start working ahead into conditionals. So I know, on my dashboard, I can see your progress here. I'm not going to show any names here, but, some of you are done with all the practice, and some of you are done with the make, close to it. Some of you haven't started the practice or are just kind of barely getting started into the practice. So again, by the end of today, I should see everyone done with the practice and hopefully done with the make. I will have office hours and I'll send those out to you, where if you have questions on the make or you just need guidance, you can zoom in later in the day. Make sure you do that. But that's what you should be working on. One thing I want to show here as well is talking about global variables versus local variables. And this is something that was, I think, brought up right here in the practice. It talks about debugging scope issues. We didn't talk about this in our presentations. We talk about variable scope. I want to just give you a quick example here of what variable scope would look like. So here's a little project. I made a button, and let's just say I want to use a clicker to see how many times I can click. Okay, a very, very awesome app, as you can see. So let's say that my score here, I'm going to create a variable var my score, and it's going to equal 0. I'll start it off at 0. And then when I click on this image, I made an event that I'm going to say my score equals, I'm going to add 1 to it, my score plus 1. Okay, so I'm going to add 1 to my score. And then when that happens, I'm going to change this text right here, this little label. This is label 1. Now, if I was writing code for a project, I should be changing the names and identifiers of these widgets to be better names than label 1. But for this example, this is what it is. Let's see if I can zoom in here. So if I were to go, let's just do a set property here. So set property. I'm going to go to the blocks here for a moment. I'm going to set the label 1 to, I'm going to set the text. And what do I want to set it to? I'm going to show you, again, a string concatenation here. I'm also going to talk about the /n here because this goes into your make as well. So let's say I want to set this text to my score. Okay. And that's what I'm going to do. So if I run this and I click on it, right now it says my score equals not a number. Okay, so there's an issue here, right? Once we fix it, you'll see why. So the reason why this is here, let's do let me just change this up a little bit. Let's say my score equals 0 here, and then I say my score equals my score plus 1. Okay. So when I run this code, okay, you can see that even if I watch my variable my score, you can see that my score is equal to 0. And then as I click, when I'm clicking, I should be adding 1 to my score, right? And it's not changing. And so there's some weird behavior happening here. So the problem with what I did here, some of you might see it right away and say, oh, you can't do that, is that I used var once, and I said var my score. I made a variable at the top of the program. Okay, if I make my variable at the top of the program, it can be seen by the whole program. It is a global variable, so to speak. So everything can see this global variable. Then inside of this block, consider this block like a room in your house, right? So I go inside this room right here, and then I create another variable called my_score equals 0. So this is a big problem right here because I create a variable and then I create another variable. I shouldn't use var twice, right? So I don't want to do this. I'm going to get rid of this, okay? And so now this should work, because now when I click, I'm going to update my score, and JavaScript is going to look and say, ooh, well, what's my score? Oh, it's this variable up here that you defined up here. So this variable, which is persistent through this whole room, this whole program, I'm going to add 1 to it. Now this would work just fine. So if you use you're starting programming here and you're starting in code in AppLab, and you use var twice for the same variable, that's not good. You don't want to create a variable twice. You want to create it once. For now, you can keep your variables at the top of the program. That's a global variable. If I create a variable inside of this room, inside of this block, it would be local, a local variable only to this block. That means no one else could see the variable outside of this block. Only statements inside of the same room, inside of the same block, could change that variable. Okay, now this should work, right? So if I run this now, when I click it, it's actually updating, right? You can see that my score is working. So if I want to make my score look better, and I want to use string concatenation, okay, I can use, in my set right here, if I want to prefix this with the word score, I can say score plus, right? So now I'm going to set the text of this label every single time when I click. I'm going to set this little property to this literal string score, and then I'm going to concatenate or add this variable here, which will be injected in there, and it will make a larger string, and it'll convert everything to a string, and then update it to the screen. And it'll just keep doing that over and over and over. Now this is static right here. This is just a score, and this is dynamic. This is a variable that's changing, so we're kind of tying those together. So if I run this, then I can see that I have score, and that's always there. Now this shows up in the make as well. If I wanted to, for some reason, let's say I want to put the score underneath it. Okay, so what I could do here is I could say score, and I want to put the score underneath. If I want, in my string, if I add a /n, okay, these are called escape characters, okay. Basically, an escape character is something that JavaScript or a program can read. It is part of the string, but since you put a /n there, it won't actually print off that character. It will translate it, and it will identify it as something else. A /n means a new line, so it'll actually drop down to a new line and then print off the next stuff that you have in there. So by me putting score and then put plus a /n and then my score, let's see what happens. So I run it. Okay, now you can see that score. I don't see the /n in here, but it actually dropped down a spot here. So I put in a /n. That shows up in the make when you do the photo liker app, and you need your comments to go on new lines. So you have something like that, right? One more thing that I want to point out here is I made my variable score on the top here, so it was global, and it was everything in my program could access this variable. If I just change this up and said, what if I defined or declared my variable in this local block, just in the event. So let's just say I did this right here. Oops, I want to do that. Let me bring this down. So let's say in this little event, I create a score and then I add one to the score. And so when I click on it, if I run it again, I click on it, you can see it says score equals 1, but it doesn't go up, it doesn't go up, it doesn't go up. Like, it's not working. The reason for that is every time I click, this block is run, and then when it runs through this code, it creates this variable, then it adds 1 to the variable, and then it sets the score to 1. Once it finishes executing and doing this whole event, now it's not inside that event anymore and it's done running that program. Once it's out of that block, this variable is now destroyed. It's gone. Like it's not needed anymore. So it just goes away. So it doesn't persist in the program. It doesn't stay there. So then when I click it again, let me just show the little debugger here. If I click on this, now you can see that the code is running this block again. Now it recreates this variable myScore, and you can see in the watchers it exists for a brief moment in time, and then in the watchers it says, oh, it's not there anymore. There is no myScore. So what I'm doing here when I'm clicking is actually this local variable is continually being created and used a little bit, and then it's destroyed, and then it's gone. So I don't want that. I need to, in this case, for what we know in programming right now, if I keep my variable up here, since it's in the main program, this will never be destroyed. It'll always be there and persistent. And then inside of these events, I can change that variable from up here. So now when I run it, it runs that code. But this variable up here, which has a global scope, isn't being destroyed. It's still there. It's not going to go away, but I'm changing the variable inside of the event. All right. So today, again, get through the practice, get through the make. I will send you some office hours. You can come in and ask me a bunch of questions about that too, but make sure you get it done. Happy virtual day.